just to let people know what's going on, we're using a new version of our webcasting software. So Neil is our guinea pig today.
I don't have a chat either.
Oops. I've been doing a poll. Where are you from? At the very back? You? Yes. Well, both of you. One or the other? Are you from University of Waterloo? And you're from University of Waterloo? Okay. Can we go? Martha, are you okay? Okay, and you could hear me as well. Okay, so let's start. Welcome everyone to this Smarter Health Seminar. I'm Shirley Fenton, and Managing Director of the Waterloo Institute for Health Informatics Research. Thank you for joining us today for this seminar. I'd like to welcome our web viewers and the Ontario Telehealth Network sites. This seminar is being recorded and is being broadcast over the web. We ask that you hold your questions to after the seminar presentation so that we can get a microphone to you. A very warm welcome to our guest speaker, Neil Gardner. We'll introduce Neil more fully in a moment. These seminars are hosted by the Waterloo Institute for Health Informatics Research, the Lawson Health Research Institute, and the National Institute for Health Informatics. I'd like to acknowledge our seminar series sponsors, Borden Ladner Gervais, McKesson, and Healthcare Information Management and Communications Canada. We could not host these seminars without their support, and we're very grateful to them. I have a couple of announcements. Our next Smarter Health Seminar will be on Wednesday, May 27. Our guest speaker is Carolyn McGregor, who is an associate professor at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. She holds the Canada Research Chair in Health Informatics. As well, we're offering 2 health informatics boot camps. From May 6th to May 8th, there is an HI boot camp for HIM professionals at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. This boot camp is designed exclusively for HIM professionals and is co-hosted by CHIMA and UOIT. Our regular health informatics boot camp will be held at the University of Waterloo from June 17th to the 19th, and you can register for both of these boot camps at our website at hi.uwaterloo.ca. Lastly, we're holding an Institute research seminar. The title of the seminar is Making Things Personal, Case-Based Reasoning for Patient Self-Management of Oral Anticoagulant Medications. This seminar is going to be given by 2 undergraduate students at the University of Waterloo, Pavel Roshanov and Nomi Chanda. They've done an excellent bit of research here, and they were the 2008 AGFA Healthcare Innovation Award winners for this work. This seminar will be held this Friday, April 24th, in this room from 12 to 1. So you're all welcome to come back and hear their seminar presentation. If you're interested in this particular seminar, I've got additional flyers over on that table, so please help yourself. The Smarter Health seminars this past few months have been focused on health informatics, the e-health industry, and HI as a profession. The schedule for today is as follows. Neil will speak for about 45 or 50 minutes. This will be followed by a facilitated discussion, and we ask that you hold your questions to after this presentation. Please signal that you've got a question and wait until we get a microphone to you. We invite our web viewers to please send in their questions by web chat. So with this, I'd like to proceed to the next part. So please welcome the founding director of our institute, Dominic Covey, who will introduce our speaker.
I didn't even do anything, and I got applause. I hope you do as well, you know. Make sure they do it beforehand, though, just in case. You know, I've got a thing here I'll read about Neil, but the most exciting thing about Neil really have occurred over the last about year and a half, where we've had an opportunity to talk. And there are many, many issues in health informatics professionalism and how to organize and how to respond to the needs of students and faculty and so on. And over that period of time, we've begun a dialogue which has been very, very successful. And today we just put the initial finishing touches, or the finishing touches, on the initial version of our student forum, National Student Forum, that will be done between the auspices of the National Institutes of Health Informatics and Coach. And I'm sure that Neil will have a few things to say about that. By the way, Neil is joined here by his daughter, Allison Gardner, who is in the back corner trying to look quiet, and I figured I'd pick on her a little bit. So Neil comes to us as a person very, very interested in education, and it comes from a background as a Chief Information Officer in Saskatchewan Health, the Ministry of Health in Saskatchewan, and has worked with the regions and organizations within Saskatchewan in establishing strategic plan, architectures, and standards guiding health information technology departments. He's a director of COACH, Canada's Health Informatics Association, and he served as a founding director for both the Canadian Institute for Health Information and Canada Health Info. I actually wasn't even aware of that, Neil, so very interesting background. He's got a lot of public sector experience. He believes strongly in a need for a collaborative approach to successfully introducing IT and enabling change. And he works that way, too. He works as a very good collaborator. He has a Master's of Public Administration degree from Harvard University, somewhat impressive. Not compared to Waterloo, of course, but where he was distinguished in his academic achievements by being named a Littauer Fellow. So, Neil, we're looking forward to your presentation. Welcome.
Thanks, Dominic and Shirley, and I'm delighted to be here today talking to you about a topic that's certainly near and dear to my heart, and very much a key area we've been focusing on at COACH. So I'm going to today talk just a little bit about COACH and who we are as an organization for those that aren't familiar with us. I'm going to talk just a little bit about eHealth and where it's going, but particularly from the context of what that means for the demand for health professionals. I'll talk a little bit about health informatics. Clearly, Dominic, of course, has been working in this field for lots of years, and so I don't pretend to sort of have the depth and breadth of knowledge that he does, but I'm going to speak to it from the perspective as a CIO, somebody that's actively working in the field in terms of the kinds of demands for people that I see. We'll talk then a little bit about what's all this mean in terms of, you know, what are these kind of new and emerging roles in health informatics? What kind of skill sets do we need, et cetera, which is really why COACH is so actively involved in trying to advance professionalism in this area. Got a few ideas I'm going to talk to you about in terms of how we might address these challenges. I think it's fair to say the challenge is huge. We'll need to employ many different approaches for meeting the challenges we have in staffing and manning this wonderful work that we're doing in Canada, and certainly that's the case in other countries as well. So I'm going to share with you some ideas in terms of things we're doing at COACH, some of the things that we're kind of doing at the local level within our province, and just what I've seen people doing in other jurisdictions. And hopefully that will help engender some good dialogue and questions, because frankly, there's many good ideas out there that, you know, we probably haven't even begun to explore yet. And so at COACH, we're really all about engaging members and the dialogue within the larger community. So this is a great opportunity today to have some of that dialogue. So really look forward to the question and answer aspect of this. So moving on then, just very quickly. So COACH has been around for a long time. Began in the mid-70s. I get very sort of visionary at the time in terms of computers, and for those of us maybe that were around to use computers in those days, we're talking mainframes and a far cry from the systems we have today. So we're Canada's Health Informatics Association. We have a pretty active and vibrant and growing community of members, both institutional members, organizations like my own, private sector companies, and lots of individual members as well. And our really vision is taking health informatics mainstream, and by that I mean getting to the point where health informatics is just part of what we do each and every day. It supports and enables all the good things we're trying to do within healthcare, as opposed to being seen as, you know, the IT department and those people with the green eye shades. So as an organization, we have a strategic plan, and really there's 4 sort of significant components to it. The first and foremost, we are a membership organization. We're here to serve the interests and needs of our members in health informatics, and we're really looking at doing things and continuing to add more services and really address the needs that our members have on a day-to-day basis. A second priority, and the one that I'm very much involved in as a director, I'm the lead for the Health Informatics Professionalism sort of agenda, is advancing health informatics as a profession. And lots of the things that we'll talk about today, I'll talk about some of the things that Coach is doing. Again, though, this is a very collaborative effort. So Coach is simply a catalyst, and in my role, I simply help to kind of coordinate some of the activity, but it's the people involved in our working groups and the organizations we work with, the partnerships with groups like Waterloo that really are going to make this agenda live and real and enable us to affect the kind of change that we want to have happen. Certainly being a thought leader around and advocate for health informatics is very much a part of what we do. And a last one is more of a sort of internal objective, and that is strengthening our communications, marketing, and outreach really to our members. So as I mentioned, we really have then, not surprisingly, kind of 4 major areas of activity. Certainly professional development, and I'll talk a lot about that today, right through to professional certification that we're launching at the eHealth conference in May, at the end of May. We have lots going on in terms of the guidelines for health information protection that we've published and update now each year. We have the Coach Journal, our eHealth conference. We've also launched a fall conference now, which is a smaller conference but very much focused on an issue or topic of the day. We're moving more and more into participating in regional events and things like the boot camp, etc. And networking, providing a vehicle for our members to share experiences, learn from each other, and work together. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the evolution, my perspective as a CIO in terms of this eHealth thing. Where are we today? Where are we going? Brendan Seaton, in an earlier session at this seminar, very much talked about eHealth and what it's all about, etc. So I'm assuming you have that kind of knowledge. I'm going to focus more on sort of where do I see this going, and particularly what's that mean in terms of the demand, both quantity and types of human resources we're going to need, not only to deliver on the promise of eHealth, but to sustain it over time. So as I mentioned, in the 70s when Coach began, focus was on mainframes, and in fact that's kind of where our name began. But really, we've seen huge strides, I think, in the last 10 to 15 years. And the first one that I had an opportunity to be involved in was CIHI. And at the time, we had several different organizations doing different things with health information. We brought that together into one group. And I think we're really starting to see much more sort of an overall cross-sector look in terms of the types of data and analysis that CIHI is doing, and it's great. Infoway, again, I had the privilege to be involved in the development of Infoway, and I think we work as provinces very closely with Infoway. It's really an organization that brings us together, sharing experiences and working together on common standards and approaches to developing the EHR, and has been an important development. We're really envied in many ways as a country in terms of having both these agencies, in terms of having this sort of pan-Canadian or national approach, which is national on the one hand, but very collaborative on the other. really bringing people to work together. And so that sort of strong and consistent leadership, I think, bodes well and certainly been important for Canada in our development. And I sit on our delegation to the International Standards group that's dealing with electronic health record standards, and certainly we're well positioned in terms of what we're doing because we have that sort of collaborative approach in terms of where we're going in terms of developing the EHR. So, what's the impact of all this? I mean, we've invested, well, Infoways has a capital budget, they've committed a good deal of money. There's $500 million now that was given this year to be committed over the next couple of years. But all in all, that investment is around $2 billion over a period of years. That's at least matched by what provinces and local health organizations are putting into sort of their matching development. But that really doesn't even include everything. I mean, we've got the pharmaceutical companies, we've got hospitals, lots of others investing in information technology. We as an industry, I think you're quite aware, are way behind other large industries, whether it's airlines, banks, etc. I think we have a vision of where we need to go in terms of enabling improvements in healthcare through technology. But we have a long ways to go when you look at where those industries are. And, you know, this is not a static thing. The further we move along this path, the more that we realize we can and should be doing. Healthcare is an amazing industry, and I've been involved in it for 20 plus years as a program manager and planner, and as a CIO in more recent years. There's huge transformation opportunities yet in healthcare, as we know, and so many of them now, almost all of them, depend on information and the supporting technology. But our investments do need to be driven by the business, by really understanding and enabling improvements in the processes of healthcare and the way information is used, not only at the front line, but in terms of establishing policy and direction. So the bottom line with all of that, there's going to be huge demands. The more we do, the more people expect. I'm often struck by how often people feel that we're much further ahead than we are in terms of when they look at other industries. Well, what do you mean I'd have to give that information again, that you can't, get it from the physician office or whatever? What do you mean you're still using paper records? I mean, we've got a lot. I think those of us who work in this area know we've got lots to do. But I think the fact we are working together is certainly very, very positive. So we've got, because of all this growth, we've got lots of people entering the industry. We're starting to see more and more programs beginning in terms of health informatics, and that's great. But as I'll talk about later, the demand and the curve in terms of the demand for resources, not only to build but to sustain these solutions, is such that we've got to be very creative in looking at how we're going to meet the skill gap that we have, both in numbers and breadth of knowledge. And so this is an issue that's going to be with us for some time. The fact that, in south of the border now, the new president's announced a $20 billion investment into health IT, and I was at the HIMSS conference a couple of weeks ago. They were talking about 200,000 new jobs in health information technology. I mean, just the volume that's happening there is going to certainly do nothing to make our challenges easier in terms of recruiting people to the field. So, given all of that, we've got healthcare transformation beginning, continuing really in most jurisdictions. We've got greater and greater demands now from the patients themselves to bring the technology to their home through telehome care and other things. We're hearing talk about personal health records, portals, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we have a huge job even to complete the job of automating our hospitals, let alone community programs and extending out into the community as far as people's homes. So the demands will be significant, and those demands are really going to, I would argue, require a breadth of skills that we haven't seen necessarily to date. And I guess the key thesis of what I'm going to talk about is we need people that are multi-skilled. health informatics is really that common set of skills across not only IT but management and clinical dimensions. So this is just an illustration, and this is our own blueprint in Saskatchewan. It looks a lot like what you'd see in other provinces. The numbers of sort of different systems that got to be connected together with common standards, terminology, let alone supporting all the business processes that need to happen are immense. I'm not going to kind of go through the sort of detail, but on the bottom here you see the types of systems that typically exist in hospitals and regional health authorities. On the right-hand side, you see physician offices, pharmacies, et cetera, et cetera. And then the top part is all about the EHR, the plumbing, the red stuff necessary to standardize terminology, facilitate secure communications and interconnections, and then the data repositories and registries that are necessary to enable us to integrate data from all these diverse points of care and systems. The EHR at the end of the day is about helping people make better decisions, whether it's at the point of care or at the sort of management and policy level. So let's not get too, the technology is complex, but the biggest issues really are thinking about how we want to use technology to enable a kind of business change and the use of information in decision making at the front lines. So there's lots of plumbing here, but this is not about technology. It really is about enabling improvements in healthcare quality, safety, and effectiveness. So, what is health informatics? It was interesting, 3 years ago, we began this dialogue with our members, and I guess maybe because I'd worked in the area for a while, I didn't realize the degree of different views there were about what health informatics was all about. And it's the classic case once you start talking about something and putting it down on paper, you really understand all the various perspectives. And so we've taken our time as an organization to do lots of dialogue with our membership, look at international work, talk with people like Dominic, who've done lots of work in this area, and really look at, so what is the set of skills that one needs to be a health informatics professional? So the first area we focused on was just a definition of what is health informatics. And our approach to thinking about health informatics is that it is really this multidisciplinary practice that brings together skills from the health sciences, from the information sciences, the management sciences. So there's this three sort of large areas, and then within those there's kind of information technology, information management, analysis and evaluation, that's the use of the data. Organizational behavioral management becomes key with change management and such. Project management, knowledge, we need to understand how the health system itself works and the roles of the various players and how they interact. And obviously there's a big need for understanding the processes of delivery of health care and the clinical terminologies, et cetera. So our thesis really is, and we've defined now a set of core competencies, all of us are going to have specializations likely within the field of health informatics, but if we're going to work effectively as a team, our view is all people involved in health informatics need to have that red area, the common core of skills that cut across those areas. So as I say, most people would have additional depth in one or more of the specialty areas, but for us to work effectively as a team, we really need to have that common set of knowledge, or we're simply ships passing in the night. So why does this matter? Well, obviously we're embarking on a significant investment that's critical, I would argue, to the success and sustainability of healthcare for the citizens of our country. Clearly, more and more studies show that health EHRs, decision support, CPOE, other uses of technology are key to enabling healthcare safety improvements, access improvements, quality improvements. Our design then of these systems clearly has to take into account the business processes, the processes by which healthcare is transacted. We need to understand privacy is a key issue. And if we're not careful, we're now creating systems that will absolutely influence care decisions at the front line. And it's going to be increasingly important that we practice our profession well, or we risk compromising what we're trying to achieve. And rather than improving quality, we could add quality risks if there's flaws in the systems or solutions that we implement. So, with all of that, this is a diagram. This came out of a study that the Ontario Hospital Association did this past year, and Coach collaborated with them. This is the first time they've been doing a study annually of health human resources, and I think is just kind of endorsing and follow along to my previous comments. There's a recognition now we've really got to start looking at health informatics resources as a key and strategic resource along with their supply of clinical professionals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this diagram, but roughly we've both got at the top a whole number of demands in terms of new systems and needs. We've got a number of different potential sources and supply to help us fill the gaps in terms of we have of knowledge. We have a number of issues we better take into account in terms of how we strengthen the skills of people we have. And on the right-hand side, there's a number of things we frankly need to pay attention to if we're going to retain the skilled resources that we have. So I'm going to just talk fairly quickly about this, but obviously, as I've talked about, the demand for health human resources in health informatics, in our view, is going to continue to escalate and continue to be a key issue. Many of us saw this coming when we started sort of InfoWay and sort of accelerating the implementation of EHRs in Canada, but I think our kind of fears are certainly coming true. And so Coach itself is launching a national study now, again, the first time that anyone's done a sort of supply and demand study of health informatics professionals in Canada. And we feel that's extremely important so we understand where the issues are, what the demand looks like, and we can start putting some metrics around just what the problem looks like. So unlike other areas, I would say we've really focused on kind of doing projects, getting technologies in place to support the EHR. Many of us have strategies within jurisdictions for how we want to develop electronic health records. In Saskatchewan, we're currently now moving into the physician offices in partnership with the Medical Association to put in place EMR systems that meet standards of interoperability with the EHR. But I would argue few of us have done anywhere near an adequate job of looking at the HR resources necessary to deliver on all the things that we want to do, that citizens expect of us. And so we really need to start working together, just as we did around the EHR. We need to start working together much more around health human resources strategies, or we won't be able to build and sustain all the visions that we have. So as the Ontario study, I think, nicely kind of encapsulates some of the sort of issues here. As you can see, there's lots of different potential sources of people, and I think many of us are trying to begin to tap those resources. I'm going to talk a little bit about strategies around that. But currently, frankly, people are just entering from each and every direction, and rarely is there a lot of good information about, if I'm coming in as an IT specialist, what do I need to know to practice in this field? People are just kind of coming in and jumping into projects, and they don't have a lot of support and guidance in terms of what skill set they need to develop to round out their background. So certainly part of the idea of sort of building the profession and strengthening the skills of people we have is to develop career pathways, a better understanding of what the competencies and skills are. At Coach, to this point, we've developed along with the sort of overall vision for health informatics, we developed a set of competency statements that cover each of those areas, and those are posted on our website. We're starting now to look at career pathways and other tools that people or organizations can use to identify where their skill gaps are. We also, though, have to pay attention to keeping, as we build skills, we need to pay attention to how we're going to keep people engaged. I mean, we're going to create some very talented, and are creating some very talented people today. There's huge demands around the world for these resources, and so we need to be very cognizant of making sure that we continue to build and support the skilled resources we have in place. So I mentioned a few times, other countries are experiencing these same strains. There's more and more discussion now about the needs for professional standards and credentials. We're introducing a credential building on what HIMSS has done in the US, but with a Canadian supplement that reflects some of the additional areas of health informatics that we feel are important in Canada. We're having discussions with a number of countries now around that very thing, and there's going to be some meetings coming up. We want to work together in terms of sharing expertise and hopefully working towards a kind of portability of credentials over time. So, what can we do to meet these challenges? So I've painted I mean, this is an exciting area to work in, and I love it. But it is a little scary in terms of thinking about how we're going to achieve all of the things that we've sketched out for ourselves without the people. So what are some of the things we're doing? Well, at Coach, here's some of the things that we have underway. Again, these are works in progress. We depend on volunteer efforts of our members, lots of feedback. So we've introduced the core competencies and a set of ethical principles. We've partnered with HIMSS in the US and have added a Canadian supplement to the exam. HIMSS had developed an exam based on competencies for health informatics professionals. We'll be introducing that at eHealth, and then it will be available at testing centers across Canada. We're working with the academic institutions on mapping their curricula against the competencies, and I think that's been useful, especially for some of the new programs that are developing curricula. We're developing I'll show you in a moment, a career matrix that kind of begins to define in a more consistent way the kind of roles in health informatics, and especially the kind of new and emerging roles that we see happening. In that vein, we're looking at then providing kind of standard job descriptions, or role descriptions that organizations can use. This will help us, I think, do a better job of recruiting and attracting people into the field, help organizations plan forward in terms of the kind of new and emerging roles that we see happening as we move down the EHR journey in particular. I mentioned we're embarking with ITAC Health, CHIMA, Infoway and CIHI, and ICTC to do a first supply and demand study in Canada. That should be happening over the summer and into the fall. So that will be very useful data to have. And we have many more things underway that we're working on in terms of career planning tools and such. So this is just, I'm just going to talk then just a little bit about some kind of conceptual ideas of how do we think about this whole field of the kinds of people that we need. Our focus has been mostly on that sort of skilled practitioner level, but we have introduced a tool that helps end users, people being introduced to new programs or new applications, the HITS tool, which was adapted from Ireland for some basic training. Certainly, Waterloo particularly has been taking some great initiatives around developing boot camps to help people coming into the industry kind of get a fast start in terms of understanding the whole field. Very much we're seeing new programs emerging, and that's wonderful, teaching and bringing new graduates out with sort of that broad base of understanding from the beginning. as I say, we're really focusing on helping the skilled practitioners in the field. And in the long run, I think we can and should do more to support the development of sort of a body of knowledge around various specialties within health informatics, although certainly academic programs are doing a great job of that today in certain key areas. So this is a paradigm that this is a bit work in progress, and I'd like to kind of get your feedback today. This is one way we've been thinking about sort of this whole field of people working in health informatics. We've got in the upper right-hand corner what we consider the health informatics professionals, the people that have that sort of broad set of skills in common. We've got a core workforce. We have a number of people working in the field. They may be IT professionals, for example, that are maintaining databases and working in the field. They don't necessarily have the broad skill sets, but they're key in terms of sustaining and supporting solutions. We've got a much more engaged and increasingly engaged set of people now using systems and beginning to build expertise. And those people are critical in our working with the front lines of healthcare. And then we've got specialists, people coming in with expertise around security, clinical specialists, et cetera, that are all part of what we're working with. But I would assert what we really want to try and do is broaden that core in the upper right-hand corner so that we have more people that are multi-skilled. So we're building this, we built this career matrix to help to kind of understand what all the various roles are in health informatics by working with organizations like my own who are out there developing systems or developing EHR solutions, implementing systems. We've tried to look at sort of taking those jobs, grouping, classifying them, and so on. And this is a work in progress, but we've really, through kind of a fairly detailed survey of the kinds of jobs that are out there, then developed a career framework that begins to help people think about where are they in this world of health informatics. And what we want to try and do with this is then develop career pathing tools that help people understand if you're working in one area and you want to move to another, what are the typical skills you would usually have to strengthen to make that kind of transition. So a few words of explanation. Again, this is on our website and there's some further detail around it. Remember our assertion that if in health informatics, you have to have a core set of knowledge across all of those 7 domains. Those are the columns are those pie slices that were in that chart. The sort of vertical represents the degree of sort of mastery that you would typically have to do that kind of job within one of those areas. The comment I would make is, while we've placed particular jobs in columns, remember they have to be multi-skilled people in our view. This simply means that the greatest degree of specialization within that job is in one of those areas. So my own job as a CIO, we see the greatest specialization, frankly, is around knowledge of the health system and how it works and the players and the relationships and that kind of thing. In the past, you might have seen that as, something that an IT person would typically aspire to, and they certainly can, but my assertion is you need to kind of have that broad set of knowledge about IT, but you certainly in today's world, if we're going to really enable healthcare transformation, the CIO has to be pretty plugged into and understand where the health system is going. So those are just illustrative, and frankly, no one would find their exact job on there. We're developing role descriptions that will describe these, but I think it does help to provide some clarity around the kinds of roles that exist, both if you're an organization trying to look forward and planning the development of your organization, or as an individual, finding where you are and where you fit within this world. That's a value, but a particular value we see as the next step in terms of developing career planning tools to help people think about if they want to move up or laterally into another area, what are the kind of skills that they would typically need to acquire and develop. And I say develop because it's not just about book knowledge. It really is about looking for career assignments, projects, etc., that help you round out your skills. So I mentioned before, the upper right-hand corner is really this sort of set of roles in health informatics, and we've tried to describe that now in a bit more detailed terms through the matrix. Our view is, ideally, we'd like to sort of expand the footprint of people that are multi-skilled. And so we see that area expanding. We're always going to need people with specialist skills. We'll always need people with, database management expertise, et cetera, and of course we'll always have champions and end users. We need them on the business side as much as we need them internally. But the more we can do to develop that sort of core set of people that can bridge across those areas, the better. And why is that? Well, fundamentally, I guess we see health informatics as a team sport. I mean, that's why I particularly like the area, because you work with lots of people, you see lots of people with lots of different talents. But we need to understand enough common things that we can work together as a team in fashioning creative solutions. Clearly, the more diversity we have, the more flexibility we have in sort of managing and addressing project priorities. As a CIO, I mean, projects change over time. As much as possible, I'd like to use a core team that has the knowledge of my environment, of the business in particular, and be able to move them from project to project. Gives us lots more flexibility. Clearly, the knowledge of the business and our technology infrastructure is becoming increasingly important. We also think that's really advantageous in terms of retaining people and providing them with lots of career paths and diversity, especially Generation Y, people a little younger than myself. I think place a lot of weight on the ability to sort of have multiple career paths and a fairly flexible work environment. So we see the need to develop and continue to build out the sort of broad skill set of our staff is really, really important. So I'm just going to walk through very quickly a few examples. If we think about, and some of these, well, these are high-level descriptions of some of the roles described in that career matrix, but if we think of somebody working as a clinical analyst, I mean, they need to understand, obviously, the business and how the business works. They need to understand the information, the terminology. They need to understand enough about the technology and systems and other systems that their local solution needs to connect into. They need to understand enough about projects and project management processes, operational processes, et cetera, because often they're involved as an advocate for the business unit and almost as a liaison with the IT side of the organization. They need good skills in terms of listening requirements, understanding, documenting, being able to really kind of present and support change management within their sort of professional area of expertise. CIOs, well, I don't know. I'm not sure what I do some days, but you need to know lots of things, and I think it's a good example of a multidisciplinary kind of role. Project managers, we've had lots of experience bringing in project managers, and we've done that successfully from other areas, but to be effective, they need to know then lots of things about the healthcare environment, and building those skills is extremely important. Change in evaluation, we need to do much more about evaluating what we do in terms of the investments we're making. Similarly, change management is a critical issue, and it's there's a lot yet to be learned about what works, and that is often quite situational. So understanding those areas is key. But to do change management, you've got to understand as well the systems and the environment that you're implementing systems into. Information analysts, one of the areas that we feel is extremely important, and I'm involved now in some national work around the use of data, is as much as we're supporting and focusing on the frontline use of data through EHRs, hospital systems, EPRs, we really also have to be thinking at the same time about the data itself and how that data can be used for planning, evaluation, research, quality improvement. And so we need people, again, that don't just kind of know how to use SaaS or use tools, but really understand the business context, the data, the policy environment within healthcare. And enough about where the data is coming from. Privacy and data access is a key area. And again, we've engaged and kind of developed privacy expertise within our own organization because we found people involved in the policy issues really then also need to understand the security, the technologies, the sort of IT environment, as well as the business context, to fashion workable, practical privacy solutions that we can get uptake on at the front line. And privacy is an extremely important issue, and I think one where all of us practicing in the field need to understand more and more about privacy and the various ways that we can protect privacy as we're developing solutions. Solutions architects, we think of architects as being highly technical. Well, solutions architects really are a good case of people that need to be able to understand the business, the data, and the technology dimensions and coming up with pragmatic solutions that work for practitioners, address privacy concerns, and meet the business needs. So we are, as I mentioned, really focused right now, as Dominic mentioned, we're partnering with NIHI in terms of a student forum. We're doing a number of things like that to support people entering the field. But our key area of focus right now is helping people that have come into the field understand what they need to do to round out their skills. And certainly certification has been part of that in terms of recognizing people that have developed those broader skill sets. So we see the certification work that we're doing as being helpful in terms of helping people understand their gaps in their competencies, help them build and address their career paths in the medium term to help then develop career paths for others that are maybe working in other areas within our organizations to enter the field. And in the long term, it's really all about patient safety, public confidence, and really establishing a sort of getting to the point where health informatics is truly mainstream and just an integral part of everything we do in healthcare. So the credential, as I mentioned, we're building off work that had been done by HIMSS in the US, and they had developed a credential which they've internationalized. We're building on that with some Canadian content. It covers the core competencies. Certification, in our view, requires skills, experience, and knowledge, so it's targeted to people that have worked 3 to 5 years at least in the field. It really complements other certifications people will have, either clinically or professionally. Again, it's meant to address that broad core set of HI competencies. So we think it's very, very key in terms of advancing informatics as a profession, but really becomes a platform that enables us now to kind of help people identify their skill needs, work together with the teaching institutions to map and identify opportunities for people to advance their knowledge and fill in the gaps. So while our focus is that sort of practicing professional, we are as well trying to work with organizations, and this is just very, very early days, but looking at what can we do to help organizations identify how we can also bring more people into the field. And so certainly there are other untapped resources. I think some of us are beginning through projects to bring in nurses and others from the field. Others from other industries who've developed expertise. And I see Derek Ritz here. He's a good case in point. Came in for another industry with lots of experience. And so there's lots we can do. Our view is if we can develop career paths for people with sort of typical backgrounds that help them identify their skill gaps and then identify where they could go to address those in terms of training, projects, assignments, etc., we could do a lot to kind of facilitate a more orderly integration of people into our industry. Certainly things like professionals looking for career changes, both clinically and in IT, but co-op students and others, I think, are great resources. But we can't just expect them to magically come into our industry and understand all they need to know. So this is all about looking for ways we can help them and help organizations attract these people, but then skill them up in a reasonable way. So this is just a couple of examples, and excuse the first part's cut off, but we just looked at a couple of examples, and this is, if you have a IT person who's maybe a recent graduate or coming from another industry, what typically, when we look at the competencies, are key areas that we would need to round out in terms of their skill sets. And again, it depends a bit what area they're going to work in, but if they're going to work as a health informatics person, our view is they need to at least understand the core skills in all these areas. You notice the last one particularly, we assume they have that depth to begin with. So the career tools would help them focus in on what do they need to know in those other areas. Similarly, you might have a nurse that's coming in. Maybe we're introducing a system in their area, they become kind of the champion or the expert user. They then want to move in and work on another one of our projects and really become a change management or an expert. And so, it's typically then some of the sort of IT processes and project management that probably are the key skill gaps that they would need to focus on. So if that's one strategy, certainly this is an industry where we've also got lots of ability to bring in specialists, to attract and use contracted resources very effectively. I think as we're doing that, certainly a key focus around transitioning that knowledge to people in our organizations is good. I think it's always ideal to have a mix of contracted and in-house resources because you bring in those new skills. But to bring them in just to do a project and walk away, to me, is short-sighted because all of these systems have to be sustained over time. But there's lots of other ways we can work together as organizations around sharing skills. This is becoming increasingly complex. And so I think there's lots. You're starting to see organizations working together to pool resources. And I think we can do more and more of that. So, that needs to be part of an HR strategy as well for many organizations. And one not to leave out is the more we can do to build expertise at the business unit level will serve us well. If we're going to be successful, anyone that's done a clinical project knows you've got to have that engagement. And the more strength and knowledge you have from within the organization, the easier it is to develop and sustain solutions over time. So it has benefits both in terms of doing projects, sustaining systems over time, but out of that, from my experience, you often find people that, gee, this is kind of neat. I'd like to do more of this on an ongoing basis. It can become a sort of source of resources, and that cross-fertilization, frankly, between business areas is often very helpful and doesn't typically happen. So I think this is certainly an area that we, again, need to pay more attention to. Infoway, as you may know, has launched a peer program with physicians, nurses, and pharmacists to help to train up some clinicians so they can work with their peers in terms of better understanding technologies and the benefits that would accrue from them implementing them. So just to close off then, if we're going to be successful, I mean, it's like many things, it becomes leadership. I mean, I think coach can play a role. Certainly groups like NIHI can play a role in terms of fostering this agenda from a development of training and research. But we all have a role to play in this as individuals in health informatics in terms of promoting the sort of the professionalism, the broad skill set. This is not something you just learn and then, kind of you park your credential. Very much a key element of the credential that we're introducing is all of us then need to maintain through ongoing education our skills. And so I think this will provide some incentives for people. We need to really create that culture of learning really promote multidisciplinary teams, people working together, learning more and more from each other. And we need to develop and reward our staff, and I think recognize the value of them increasing not only the specialty skills, but the multi-skills as a health informatics professional. And so I would argue that means we talk change management and we talk it with the business units. We need to be doing some of the same internally. We need to be breaking down the silos, getting our teams much more multidisciplinary and working together if we're going to be as successful as we want to be in this critical area for healthcare. So there's much to do. I think we've made a lot of progress in recent years in Canada. We have lots of good things happening. It's an exciting area in health informatics, and it's an expanding field. We're seeing more and more new faces, and that's great. Coach certainly wants to continue to help foster and move that agenda along. But frankly, we're only as successful as all of you participating in the engagement of our membership. So, and we use the HIP, Health Informatics Professional, and it's cool to be hip. So, thank you very much.
So somewhere there was a microphone, and that's disappeared. Do you have one? Sure, there was another one somewhere, but... Oh, you have it. Good. Okay. Will you... should I take that, or are you... Okay. So just to start the questions off, we invite people to ask questions or make comments, and in order to do that, we'll get a microphone to you. A few years ago, Neil, the term CIO meant career is over. And it seems like CIOs these days have a somewhat longer half-life. Have things changed in the CIO domain that make it a more survivable profession, or just kind of curious about that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I still see a lot of turnover. Some of it's because there's so many opportunities for people to move along to. I think, though, in part, I think it is becoming, you see more people in their roles longer. And I attribute that, Dominic, to a better understanding now about what the role of a CIO is. I think historically there was sort of a bit of this sense of, well, you just kind of, it's the next step up the ladder within an IT organization, or you can just transport somebody in because they were a manager in some other area of the business. And I think there's much more of an understanding now about the need for that sort of broader skill set.
In fact, people don't necessarily just walk up the ladder, just by sheer, people leaving at the top, and it seems like therefore people will be brought in with that broader skill set and be more able to survive. I guess the other side of that is management perhaps is becoming more aware of senior management of the role of the CIO. Is that a part of it as well?
I think so as well, yes. I mean, we've still got a ways to go in that way, but I think you're starting to see CIOs now at the executive table very engaged in strategic planning for their organization to a much greater degree. And frankly, in the e-health world, that's critical. I mean, we are, as important as the HR and our initiatives are, they're only valuable if they're enabling the kind of healthcare transformation that we need to have happen.
Interesting. Questions or comments that you have? I'll fill in because I've got a number of them, but go ahead and speak directly into the microphone.
Hi. I noticed that during the presentation it was told that we would recognize foreign credentials. How important is that going to be in the development of this process?
Okay. I didn't comment on that specifically, but I think one of the areas of sort of resources that we probably don't draw on enough is people that have been trained in another country, especially in clinical areas, may not be licensed to practice in Canada, but have lots of knowledge about healthcare and terminology and so on. And again, I think it's another area that we need to be creative in terms of developing bridging programs to help people with that sort of clinical knowledge, then learn enough about the Canadian health context, and then enough about the sort of technology and privacy context to go with it. So if you think of the 7 areas, one was that clinical area, another was the health system, another was information management, et cetera. It really is kind of looking at people that have key, deep knowledge in one area and looking at how we could you build on that by rounding out their knowledge in all the others.
Other questions? Maher and then, yeah.
Very interesting talk. Would you please elaborate a little bit more on the CHIMS, the Canadian version of the HIMSS credentials, and how is it different than the HIMSS one? And does it require to be renewed after a certain number of years, or it's just one-time certificate?
Right. Okay. What we did is we took the core competencies that we had defined and developed in Canada through a lot of consultation with our membership and mapped those against the sort of key skills that the CPHIMSS in the US had captured. And we identified 3 or 4 areas that we felt needed additional emphasis in terms of practicing in the Canadian context. One was certainly knowledge of the Canadian health system and some of our privacy environment, how the system's organized, that kind of thing. Another key one that we felt needed more emphasis given our approach and how far we are down the path towards the EHR is standards, both information standards and sort of the interoperability standards. And a third one was the area of information analysis. In our view, this is not just about creating systems that people use at the front line. We've really got to be thinking about and understanding the terminology if we're going to make data interoperable between systems, and if we're going to be able to then aggregate it and use it for health system management research, et cetera. So those were sort of the key areas. I think, Alison, on our website, I think we've identified the key areas that the Canadian exam supplement covers, and there's a guide to it that explains what the Canadian supplement is about. So the HIMSS exam, as you may know, is essentially 100 questions, and we've added 30 to it. So it's 2 exams, but you can take them either together or at separate times. But together you get a CPHIMSS-CA credential. It's good for 3 years, and then you're required to either have achieved sufficient credits in terms of continuous learning, and it'll be renewed, or if you haven't, then you can retake the exam. Does that help? There's certainly lots more information available on our website, and in fact, Alison was just doing some webinars the last few weeks with people to explain what it's about and how you can apply, etc. So I encourage you, if anyone has interest, feel free to go to our website and certainly contact Alison or our office at Coach.
Derek?
Neil, other sectors, and I'm thinking specifically of banking, when they broadly adopted IT, they did it in sort of 2 phases. And in the first phase, they sort of paved their cow paths. They used computers to mimic the paper-based processes. And then in the second phase, they enjoyed their real benefits by employing the new tools to work in new ways. One of the things that is a challenge, I think, in healthcare is we're trying to do both of those at the same time. We're trying to go directly to the working in new ways as well. And there are some genuine change management challenges for the overall system because of that. I think that health informatics professionals are going to have a significant and important role to play there. What's your view on how we can successfully go to the end game more readily, because it takes a long time to change these systems?
No, I think that's a good point, Derek. I mean, I think certainly health informatics professionals are key, given that sort of dual agenda of, implementing new ways of doing business using technology. I think oftentimes we have a vision of where we want to go. I think we've got to be careful that we don't try to do it in one huge step that, frankly, is unachievable. So typically, in my experience, the best projects are ones that kind of divide it up into a sequence of manageable steps. I think the more we can do, frankly, to begin to expose business units and introduce basic technologies now, and get them more comfortable with technology, the more of that we can do early on, the better. Certainly, building the expertise, having enough skilled people that really understand the business, creating peers, champions, etc., will really sort of help us get there. But it's a huge challenge in healthcare. I mean, the healthcare system is complex. people out there on the front lines are busy. It's difficult to get their time to do the re-engineering. Change is difficult. It is a big, big change. It often involves changes in how the professions work together. I mean, so it's more complicated than banking in the sense that, you know, while it's a health system, it isn't like it's one organization where we can just sort of make a decision and kind of impose change from the top. We've really got to build that support from the bottom.
Hi. I just wanted to make a comment. As a new graduate, and just basically I'm learning about health informatics, what I've noticed is, and you spoke about the enormous need for human output that's going to be relevant in the next couple of years. What I've noticed is that there isn't that big of an emphasis by, say, organizations and companies to recruit new people or new individuals that are coming into university, you know, to give them a sense of, you know, that there is this industry that does exist. I think if you went on campus here, not even 5% of people would know that there's something called health informatics. So I think there needs to be an aggressive marketing and campaign push all over Canada, especially in universities, beginning of universities, to get individuals to move towards this sector if you guys want to really sustain something, I believe.
I think that's a really good point. And Allison was part of, I think, the last career fair here, and I think it was very instructive in terms of the numbers of students that had no idea what kind of opportunities there were in our field. And it was just an illustration of the exact point you're making. One of the things, we have a group that we're working with the teaching institutions on, and we're looking at ways that we can help to profile the profession, develop materials for career fairs, for high school guidance counselors and others too. Because people don't recognize it's a profession, right? They think IT, well, I don't want to do that. This is quite a different field, and I think there's a lot to be said for it.
I just wanted to make one further comment. Like, I just graduated in health studies and management, but I have, like, just personally, I have absolutely no idea where I'm going to go with this. Like, I want to get into health informatics, but I have absolutely no idea which part of the health informatics system I want to get into. And I guess that's the sort of confusion that even people who are considering it would be dealing with. So I think there needs to be an effort to basically sort that out. Like, you mentioned the designation that you guys are coming out with, but the problem that I see with that is that you need a minimum, sorry if I'm wrong, you need a minimum of 3 years of experience with that. So that kind of pushes the people who are new graduates even back further, I suppose, that you have difficulty as it is getting a new job. And then to be accredited, you need 3 years of experience. Well, if you're graduating, you're more or less not going to have any experience to begin with. So I think maybe if you guys targeted something at new graduates where they could write an exam and, you know, prove that they do have knowledge of different systems, and that could help them basically give them a boost into the health informatics sector.
Well, you're suggesting that as some sort of a basic initial credential. I mean, you have to realize that most people who graduate from here have actually quite a bit of experience from co-op. The ones that don't would still be able to sit down for the exam when they've got the experience, but nothing prevents them in between from getting jobs. And what we're finding is, as we talk to companies, the need for in co-op or graduate positions for health informatics interested students with almost no background is dramatic. So it's not that difficult to find opportunities out there. Now we're having the downturn, the economic downturn, and that may affect things at least on a temporary basis, but the opportunities are enormous. Basically the health systems will take people who know the word informatics and have a beating heart in a lot of cases, you know. So it may just be a personal experience, because we're finding that our students go into a vacuum very quickly. Sorry. Good.
Yeah, I'm hoping too that through things like the career matrix that now start to define what those roles are, it makes it easier for students.
Yeah, it was very helpful when I saw it.
Yeah. Well, especially once the descriptions of the roles are there, because frankly, if you're anything like me, like I didn't start in this field. My background is sort of, you know, healthcare management, etc. I've always had an interest in information and so on. But many of us, increasingly, I think, have quite diverse career paths. The nice thing about the matrix is I think it helps you understand there's lots of places you can start, and then you can broaden your skills and move into lots of different other roles, which, I mean, I think it's great.
Most, most professions have an experience or waiting period, I'll call it, between graduation and qualification, if you will.
Right.
And so it's not unusual to have to wait, but if you have any skill in this area, I suspect you'll be sucked up so fast your head will spin, so I don't think it's a real issue.
I think, too, though, if we can develop career paths for a typical new grad that's moving into an area, that helps them kind of have a target in terms of getting to being credentialed and understanding what they need to look for in terms of, you know, especially kind of job placements and on-the-job experience to get there.
This is very interesting, and I think it's interesting to note other emerging professions have used organizations like the CMA to establish their accreditation standards for the universities and colleges. And I wonder if there's been any consideration approaching the CMA to help formalize the processes, because I think what's missing is sort of a standard or kind of a stamp, if you like, that people can draw to and kind of get their head around what a health informatics professional really is.
What's the CMA? Sorry.
The CMA is the Canadian Medical Association.
Oh,
and they
CMA,
accredit allied health, and I think that could be an important maturation step for healthcare informatics professionals.
Well, we can certainly, I mean, it's probably worth having more of that discussion. I guess the only comment I'd make, because it is so multidisciplinary, I think there's lots the CMA can sort of add in terms of sort of knowledge in sort of especially the sort of clinical areas. But, you know, we really do feel credentialing-wise, we've got to make sure we've sort of represented sort of all 7 of those areas. That's why working with HIMSS in the U.S., and they did a lot of work. I mean, their credential has a number of years behind it, and you know, we've added to it, but that's simply supplementing the good work that had already been done.
Yeah, and I'm calling you to say, I know that the HIMSS exam process worried me as to the quality of it, and I actually looked into it and found the amount of work that had gone into not only the preparation of the questions, but the evaluation of the quality of the instrument. Mm-hmm. And I was quite pleased that Coach chose that standard, I mean, as an exam. So rather than doing something they built on that. So I think there's reasonable confidence that exam does add value. A good person, the reference on that is Bill Hirsch at Oregon Health and Sciences University, and he actually took the exam and came out of it saying it really was worth doing, and it did establish a basic level of that you had a basic level of competence. So I'm sorry to interrupt you.
I'd just like to ask a question regarding the vendors. One of our biggest problems to get systems to work together is that they don't, and you know, GE doesn't work with Siemens, whatever, you know, and I just wondered if you had thought or Coach had this would work with some of the vendors to try and get them to work together. I mean, all hospitals. I work in a hospital, and we have multi-company things. Our hemodynamic systems are Philips. You know, we have other systems that are GE, like I say, and Siemens, and nothing talks to one another. Mm-hmm. So it's really difficult to try and get a computerized medical record, because you've got all these little things and nothing talks to one another. So that's a big problem for trying to get the computerized medical record to start. Right.
No, and standards, interoperability especially is sort of a key issue. A number of us from Coach are involved in the international standards work. I mean, the challenge is the opportunity is most of these companies are now global in nature, Philips, GE, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really starting to work at sort of the international level in terms of establishing those standards. And I think we've got a ways to go yet, and especially in areas like hemodialysis, but you know, we're doing a lot of work right now around EMR standards in terms of working together as provinces, establishing common standards and expectations for the vendors in terms of interoperability for lab results, for e-prescribing, et cetera. And I've been involved in the world of standards for a long time, and you know, there's lots of standards out there. I think we are, though, getting to a point where we're beginning to make progress around, and frankly, from the vendor perspective, we have to be consistent as the purchasers of systems in terms of what standards we want them to use. And I think, you know, that kind of collaboration is key in getting there. It's a key issue. I mean, there's so many challenges to implementing systems in the healthcare environment, just from the business perspective. You add to that then the multitude of systems and interfaces, and if we could, anything we can do to reduce that burden enables us to focus on the things that I would argue are really, really important.
One of the main things I think too is to have the team that is going out there to purchase the system is knowledgeable about what you've already got and what you want
Yes.
to do. So you need to get your team has to be the right team to go out and purchase the system.
So you know what interoperability actually means. By the way, just for have some fun, if you really have trouble with this, you should turn around to the guy behind you and he'll tell you which company you should have gone with. Over here, sir. Good.
Thanks very much. I'd like to make 3 comments. One is in reference to the point about new graduates looking for positions. I'm with one of those local health integration networks, which is like Saskatchewan Health Authority Light. Mm-hmm. And of the 14, they have positions in there called performance consultants. And I think they are the ones that are looking for informatics backgrounds and this numerics capability, et cetera. So if you want to do some searches in those areas, look under performance. And we've been doing that recently, and I have a health informatics person that I think we've nailed down. Secondly, the term is often used that technology is an enabler. I'm the e-health liaison with our LIN, and I've sat and listened to presentations and heard this e-health as an enabler. Every lens has 2 priorities: reduce ALCs in hospitals and reduce the ED wait times in hospitals. It's the 2 priorities. And if I go through the e-health plans and listen to the presentations, rarely do I hear someone connect the dot to say, informatics is going to help reduce the ALCs in the hospital. And I think you have to do that when that's your number 1 priority of those LIN guys. The third thing I would say, and I go to your comment, Neil, this is an exciting area to work in, but I'm a little scared of how we at Coach are going to achieve all the things we have to. I think you're being a little bit coy on that. I think when you talk about team solutions and system performance, and I'm not making this as a frivolous observation, I think we're going to have to rescind the Medical Act of Ontario of 1842, because it was set up when individual health care was given by individual professionals, and that's no longer the case. And when we try to come into system performance, I think we need a system college or a college of system performance, a college of quality care, not 42, 60 colleges that put up those silos and prevent this technology from actually performing. That's not my commenting. That's my experience since 1964. And I hope to have 50 years in this business. But you just see it meeting after meeting after meeting. And when you take all those layers off, we're going to have to get into this new era that's coming. And I think that's what we're facing now. So those are just the 3 comments. I appreciate these seminars and the opportunity to come here, Shirley.
I don't want to cut anybody's question. You have questions online? No. I want to take a different tack, picking up on Derek's point. You've mentioned in your talk that we really aren't facing technology problems today. It's not so much technology problems, but rather really the focus today is on the business and delivering value, if you want, within the business. In looking at the division, if you want, of jobs, I think there are a couple of areas that we might want to suggest need to be there. One of them relates to what we call the cofactors of technology, the management of change. You have something related to evaluation and management. But those are 2 entirely different disciplines and rarely executed together. But management of change, re-engineering, organizational restructuring, the human resources restructuring, all those areas are absolutely crucial. But most of our IS departments have no one in those areas. So nobody's doing the workflow, as you brought up as an important thing. So one other competency dimension here, if you want, or subdimension, is, I think, this workflow. And you can comment on this. And the second one relates to the use of information sciences. There's also computer sciences. And one of the gaps that we see is the lack of understanding of things like computer architectures and applications architectures, so that they're, you really know what you're working with. You're not just sticking systems in. You're sticking in models of
Right.
environments. And again, I didn't see that there. I wonder if those are things that you wanted to comment on, or might be additions to what you're talking about here. And I know we've got a system architect in the back who could say that a lot better than I could.
Yeah.
And you may have a comment, Erkan, as well. So.
Okay, no, that's good. Actually, when we were talking before, Alice and I were talking about that one role description that you said had evaluation and change management, and I was kind of, we took this from survey of real jobs, and we'll refine it as we do more of that data collection. But my comment as a CIO was, for me, those are quite distinct roles, and frankly, we need significant people in both areas. But change management, in my view, I would totally agree, is a sort of skill set that's quite different. We're doing a lot in our province right now around, looking at lean and some of the different process techniques, and that's really getting
The
a lot of
workflow side of the thing, you mean?
on the workflow
engineering?
side, yeah, and it's really driven by our Health Quality Council and from that sort of quality agenda. And to your comment, kind of let's look at what needs to happen from the patient's perspective versus the traditional approach of, what each profession is defined they do as a profession. Let's kind of reverse the table and look at the process through a patient lens.
And the re-engineers are really industrial engineers that's really the field. I think what it comes at, my reaction to it is it's still too IT oriented, what's there. It needs to become more business oriented. Some businesses in there, and it also need to become more human oriented. So the social sciences aspect of an adoption and so on is less clear in that matrix. I don't know, Erkan, do you want to add anything to this?
No, I was going to make a comment about your earlier comment about architectures and like the system architectures, just before answering the last question. I work for a vendor, and the one comment that Derek mentioned about the financial systems following first form replacement and then advanced finance systems. I think it's very important to attract professionals from the different industries rather than really trying to raise them bottom up. Today, finance, logistics, defense, they are much farther ahead in using technology for their business results. I mean, today in logistics, when you leave Walmart with your plastic bag, I mean, the supply chain order is already placed to the manufacturing in China before you hit your car. And in finance, when it comes to the complexity of the architecture, I mean, the point of access, most of us are doing online banking today. It's at home already. And then the ATM, like the distribution of this, the technology complex system is much farther than healthcare today. So I think attracting this cross-industry professionals into healthcare, and then it's very important. Yeah. And then from the metrics point of view, it's the first time I saw the metrics. I think it's impressive because it's clearly showing a career path to the students, to the new graduates, or to people who would like to change their profession, even in healthcare or from different industry. I think it's very well put together. We will, as vendors, also benefit that as well. I mean, I think it's a very good point. But I agree with Dominic's point. I think the system architecture, like what you define as the solutions architect, was represented in the matrix. I mean, there was CTO column, there was the CIO column, but the inherent computer architecture or the system architecture is very important and one of the major challenges in e-health today.
Okay. That's good. This career matrix has been out about 3 weeks. So, and our view about these things is let's get products out there, get comments, because that's how we improve them. So those comments
Is there any formal pathway for doing that?
Really to reply and submit ideas to the coach website is how we're looking to get comments. We do want to expand our sort of engagement with organizations, and we have both private and public in this now, but we want to expand it out to more and get a kind of broader universe of jobs, and I think it'll help us refine the matrix. The other thing that we're doing, which will be quite, and I didn't mention, which will be quite instructive, is we're using the career matrix and those definitions as the guide to then doing our survey of supply and demand. So that will tell us something about where people say they have things that don't fit, what those things are. that will help it be another sort of way of helping us refine and add to it. We certainly see adding more jobs than what's there, but so really appreciate the ideas, and we look forward to that feedback.
Derek?
I would suggest, Neil, is an important role of a CIO is to be to have that systems view the health system, the whole thing, which is a federated system, as has been pointed out. And you can apply lean techniques, industrial engineering techniques inside the four walls of your hospital, but it's how does that hospital work with primary care and with the labs and with that whole system. That system view is one of the things that often it's the role of the CIO or the regional LIN lead to take and get that whole group of silos to start acting like a system. That might be the biggest challenge we've got, is the thing we call the healthcare system does not today operate in a systematic way.
And I think, Derek, that's one reason we're starting to look at it much more from a patient perspective, because that's where you start thinking across the stovepipes, as opposed to looking at it from an individual institutional perspective.
So we have only 2 minutes. I don't want to cut anyone off that has a question or a comment. If not, first of all, this has been a really enjoyable talk. And one of the things that we're very interested in is this issue of continuing education, the transformation of people who are in your already practicing informatics. Mm-hmm. What we found is getting those people into educational events is extraordinarily difficult, near impossible. So we don't even know a good strategy for doing that, of reaching the people, because we find that at times the IS management blocks the information about educational programs going into the IS department, and then, of course, getting people from the department to get support if they have money and so on. Mm-hmm. And, it would be very interesting to dialogue with Coach about how the heck do we do that? What are the answers? I don't think any of us has a quick answer, but, if you have some points, we welcome it. I think that's the big challenge, is how do we take the people already in the field and upgrade them to a level through continuing education where they in fact can perform the jobs that they are attempting to perform without that education.
Yeah. Well, I think putting an emphasis on HR planning as part of any e-health strategy is key, and developing the career planning tools that help individuals, and then working in the middle with managers around really emphasizing the need for development of staff and giving them the tools to help identify where the gaps are.
So it's getting right into the organizations. It's going to require a big effort.
It will, but I think as a CIO, it's something we all need to do, and because we're not going to be successful if we don't develop the skilled workforce going forward to support all the great things that we want and can do.
All right, well, I see our session time has come to a close and ending, and I'm sort of regretful about that because the discussion has certainly been very interesting. And I want to thank you, Neil, for traveling to us today. I know that you're on your way to another destination, so to capture you for today was very wonderful for us. Please thank, this is a token of our appreciation, so thank you for coming, and may we all give our thanks to Neil for being our speaker today. So with that, I'd like to bring the session to a close, and I invite you all to come back on May 27th to listen to our next guest speaker, Professor Carolyn McGregor, and she'll be talking about decision support systems and some of the very wonderful work that she's been doing in intelligent decision support systems, some of it with IBM. So please come back. I think we're again around the corner next door in room 1302, so don't get lost if you come back in person. And